You have questions and we've got some answers.
Welcome to Q&A with A&D. All right, Desiree, so here's a question that comes up commonly. The difference between rehearsing versus training.
Ooh, okay. Very good question. So I'll back it up even further to social dancing versus performing, right? They're two totally different things. Now, we are in this space now that salsa, bachata, cha-cha-cha, merengue, all of these Afro-Latin dances have grown to the point where we are presenting them in a more artistic way. But having the skill set of being a social dancer and having the skill set of being a performer are very different. Now, to be a performer, you might have a routine. And to do the routine as a company or as a partnership or as a solo, you have to rehearse the routine. So you're going over movements through the routine, executing those movements, working on more dynamic shifts, working on performance quality, showmanship in those rehearsals. Now, rehearsal is not the space for you to learn how to do some of the foundational movements in the routine. That's where you take your technique classes, and that's where you train. Training comes in when you're learning the techniques to support the dance that you ultimately want to do. So if I am in class and I'm learning a technique class, right? And I'm learning how to do my Suzy Q, or if I'm learning how to do a double pirouette, right? I'm learning how to execute those movements kinesthetically so that I have the muscle memory to be able to replicate those movements on demand. I'm like, this is what I need to do, right? I need to pull up, I need to engage my core, I need to X, Y, and Z to be able to do this movement. And then you call upon that technique in the rehearsal. But nowhere should the choreographer be explaining to you how to do a double pirouette in the rehearsal. It don't work like that. Now you could be investigating, maybe there's some like specific choreography where the move is a little bit complex and you're like working out with your partner, how should we do this together? That's different than like stopping.
Learning the technique there.
And learning the technique then.
I think what's important also is that speaking about like time, for example, the way that I see, for example, rehearsing a choreography, typically we see now that there's a lot of new dance companies that have arisen. Sometimes they take dancers that are not necessarily completely technically ready for those routines. But in theory, right, you can say, okay, going through the movements, going through the choreography, being in this location, doing these specific moves, you can pick that up in a relatively short amount of time. I think when we talk about training, for example, technique, developing these skill sets, it requires a little bit more time. And that's more of like the repetition, the muscle memory, the really understanding what the technique is, the exact how part of the dance, not the what. And so that definitely requires a little bit more patience, a little bit more time, because you have to get your body used to moving a certain way and executing a certain way before you're ready to say, okay, I'm gonna apply this technique for this specific move, right? Or learning like a sequence as part of a choreography.
Absolutely. Just to break that down to something very simple. If you are in, let's talk about this Afro-Latin dance world, right? We see a lot of choreographies, a lot of student teams are out there, and they are not, it's not a prerequisite, or you don't have to take your technique classes. All you have to do is just come to rehearsal and show up to learn this choreography. But the choreography has splits, it has kicks, it has all of this other dance technique stuff that you have not been doing in salsa and just regular bachata when you were taking those technique classes. So when are you supposed to be learning these things? When are you supposed to be conditioning your body to be able to execute those movements? And that's when you get on stage looking a boo-boo fool because you out here like, brah, 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 doing all of these other things that are outside of your skill set, and you're not training them, right? When you're not training in Afro-Cuban dances and folklore, but you're adding pieces of that, spreading that randomly in your choreography, but you don't understand the muscle, maybe you don't understand the sensitivity, the texture, all of those things to be able to execute those moves. So training is very, very different than rehearsing.